So, how do you increase your sales? And today we're going to use three biblical principles to talk about increasing your sales and revenue. And last week, or the last time we did our last podcast and the podcast before that, we talked about some of the things that may be getting in your way and closing your sales, right? We discussed whether it's your mindset around money, which is subconsciously sabotaging you, whether it's you relying on your own strength and trying to deceive people, your confidence, you trying to sell out of your pocket. So we discussed multiple different things that may be getting in your way of actually closing the sales conversation that you are having with your prospect. So in this episode, we're going to talk about three principles on how you could increase your sales, and those are based on biblical principles. I am Anne Jean Pierre, and if this is your first time here, welcome. On this channel, we talk everything about godly businesses and godly principles in our businesses. And since I'm a sales coach, I also talk about mostly about sales, how to master the sales conversation, and what you need to do, all using biblical principles. So if you find find those subjects interesting, you are in the right place. Subscribe, leave a comment, share to anyone that you think may find this type of video useful. And without further ado, we're going to get into our conversation today. So again, like I said, today's conversation is going to be about how to increase your sales based on biblical principles. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is relying on God, not yourself. So last week we kind of touched on that subject, but we came at it from the perspective of feeling like you have to be deceitful when you are trying to make your offer to your prospect, right? And we talked about how because there's such a narrative, a negative connotation, and a negative view of sales already, a lot of people oftentimes see that if you are selling, that somehow you have to be deceitful. And we've established that is not correct, right? That is definitely not correct. And that is not the case, especially if you call yourself a follower of Christ, right? So we definitely don't want to use deceit. But today I'm going to approach not relying on yourself from a different perspective. So our verse for this part is found in Deuteronomy. Say that 3 times. Deuteronomy. That's how I could say it, y'all. If I say it wrong, let me know how you're supposed to say it. But Deuteronomy 8, verse 18, which is, "You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenants that he swore to your forefathers as it is this day." Right? So it's God who gives us increase. It's God who gives us wealth. So knowing that, you should automatically feel a lot less, how would I put this? A lot less striving, right? A lot less nervous when it comes to having the sales conversation. And trust me, I understand. As a business owner, you are the go-to, right? You have to grind for your business more than your staff because it's your name, it's your brand, it's your baby, so to speak, right? But we have to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, whatever we do, we have to relinquish it to God. God is the one that produces the increase that we have. He's the one that gives us the ability to produce wealth, right? And so it is not all on ourselves. So that pressure should be a lot less to having to force yourself to do certain things, to get to the point where you are so focused on the money, so focused on the go get it, working 80 to 100 hours a day, not a day, a week, right? Working so many hours to try to get money because you're still trying to rely on yourself, right? So while you may not be being deceitful like we talked about last week, If you are putting everything on your shoulder, like, I have to be the one to go get the clients, I have to be the one to close them, I have to be all of those things, it can weigh down on you. And it is also a form of pride, because you are literally thinking that you're the one who brings yourself wealth, you're the one who brings yourself success. And according to that verse, we see that God is the one who gives us the ability to produce wealth, that we do not rely on our own strength for that. He literally said, comes to him about everything, right? He said, pray about everything. So before you go into any business strategy, any business call, any structure, anything that you're about to get involved in for your business, and in this case, more specifically, the sales, right? How do I increase my sales? How do I get the marketing department on board? How do I get the sales department on board? All of those things, you need to slow down and remember that it's God who gives you the ability, and it's not all on your own strength. So go back and repent for pride, because that's what it is, right? We got to repent for our pride and thinking that we are the one who causes the increase because of the things we do, and not because that God has given us a blessing and the ability to do it. So that's the first thing that we need to consider and think about, right? God is the one who gives us the ability to increase on ourselves. So now that you know that, how do you approach your sales team? How do you approach the marketing team? How do you approach having the sales conversation, right? It's going to make your life a lot less stressful, because you are going to trust God to send you the right clients. You do your part, and then you leave the rest to God. You show up and you leave the rest to God, right? So that's the first thing that we need to shift our mind around when it comes to sales or running businesses of any kind, is to know that God is the one that gives the increase, and we are going to rely on him first, and to remove that pressure from ourselves as, I have to get it. You do your part and leave the rest to God. So the second part that I want to talk about, we're going to start with another verse, is to focus on serving others rather than the money. We also touched lightly on that last time about the sales conversation, right? So oftentimes when you're in the sales conversation, especially as a newer salesperson, oftentimes it's focusing on my response to the prospect, focusing on my pitch, focusing on, I don't like script, but a lot of people still use them, right? Script, focusing on what I'm going to say next, instead of like being present and listening. So last week we talked a little bit about that aspect, right? Trying to focus more on the conversation itself versus how I'm going to overcome objections, how I'm going to do all of those things. Now, today I'm going to approach that same subject on this on the sales conversation, but from a slightly different angle, and that is focusing on serving others versus greed. So the reading we have is from First Peter 5:2. Oops, hold up, trying to find it. I wasn't ready. First Peter 5:2, which reads, shepherd the flock of God, which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly. Right? So our job, while this is talking more specifically on the stance of, like, overseeing the flock as in the church, but I look at our, as Christians, anything that we do, because it says work as if you are working unto the Lord, right? And the Great Commission to all of us, not just pastors and deacons and things like that. The Great Commission to all of us is to preach the kingdom of God to everybody, right? And so in our businesses, whatever it is that you do, right? If you're a consultant, you're a coach, you sell hair products, you cut grass, in construction, whatever business you are in, it's an opportunity for us to um, be commissioners of the good news of the gospel, right? So that's what it is. So you do have the people that are in your range of influence, if you will, which oftentimes is your employees and your business partners, your whatever different stakeholders that you have, and of course your customers, which are also stakeholders, right? Your customers, those people are your flock. And so the purpose of going into business, yes, is to make money because you do want to make money. But in order for you to become wealthy, you have to serve, right? I was trying to find the verse earlier on what talks about the more people you serve, the more doors open for you, something along those lines, right? And so we also have to think when we think about serving others, we will gain the wealth. The wealth will follow, right? Because we often hear if you solve a problem, right, for people, you will you will increase in value, and therefore the more valuable you are, the more money you make, right? And so in for us, the value that we create is in serving people, serving them the best that we can. Whatever value that we are bringing to the marketplace, we are doing it as from a servant's heart, right? From a servant leadership, if you will, right? So we are wanting to not just go, hey, I'm going to go after the money and focus on the money, because a lot of times, again, money can oftentimes, the love of money can oftentimes will poison your heart, right? If the focus shift from serving to money, you are oftentimes going to cut corners. Um, Again, we talked about it last week. Be deceitful, right? Over promise and under deliver, all of those things, because then you switch your focus from serving to making money. But I promise you, if you focus first on serving and delivering the best value to your customers, right? The best value to your client, the best of yourself, and you show up 100% how you should show up for the people that you serve at every capacity. And the people that you serve is not just your clients. Please understand that your employees, your staff, your even your 1099, people that you hire for temporarily, vendors and things like that. You are in leadership to serve those people. So you serve them in every capacity that you can. You serve them in kindness, not just in the job description itself of what you're supposed to do, but you serve them with kindness, you serve them with patience, you serve them with generosity, you serve them with understanding, you serve them in love, and you definitely serve them by being an example of Christ to them, right? So the focus in trying to increase yourselves biblically should shift from how many clients can I close today, which you definitely have to have a goal set for yourself, right? And we've talked about that in other videos on how to manage your goal throughout the year and set realistic goal on how you're going to achieve them, right? We've talked about that before, but I want to focus on that same subject from a different vantage point. And is the fact that when you are serving others, you are going to reap the benefits of that. I'm telling you, if you are someone who, let's say you're working with a vendor and their experience with you, because most of the time vendors work with more than just you, right? They're vendors. They're going to work with you. They're going to work with other people. You have no idea what that person is speaking about you to other people, right? Those people now could be recruiters for your business. They can become your own recruiters because they've had such a great experience with you, because they've had such you've blessed them so much, not just in finances, but in your courtesy, in your praying for them, right? And you're being attentive to their needs, right? I talked about this, like even if someone, let's say, come and cuts your grass, right? And they see your truck out there and you're a business person, right? And they're coming to cut the grass on your property, and out of your kindness you bring them water, and you talk to them, you check on them, right? Those people will most likely, in your kindness, they will see the sign of your business. And maybe next time that someone brings a conversation and it's like, hey, do you know such and such? Be like, oh, you know what, I know this company, and refer you out to to other people because you have showed them kindness. So this is one of the things that, having an attitude of servitude and being a servant leader, right? Being available to just do more than just checking the box, right? Those are the things that are going to increase your influence, give you great reviews, right? And also make your name great, right? We in Haiti we have this thing about like whose family you're from, right? Because your family name is very important. So if you tarnish your family's name, it's like you hear older folks always say like, oh, who's your grandfather, what's his name, where he's from, and things like that. And it's like once they know, it's like, no, 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 that family is the thieves, right? And it's like, well, the great grandfather stole something like 4 or 5 generations ago, but now that great grandfather has tarnished the name of the family to where they may not want their daughters or son to get married into that family because you have a bad reputation, right? And so your name is very important. Your brand is very important. So an attitude of servitude is going to go a long way for you. So in the sales conversation, I want you to focus on how you can serve that person. And exactly the same thing we talked about in our last episode, right? So in the call, listen, be actively listening to what they are saying their needs are, right? What they are saying their problems are, what they are saying their pinpoints are. And then you focus on finding the solution to that problem and position yourself as the person that can help them achieve that goal, that can help them resolve their pain point. And I promise you, once you do that, you will not just close, but you will gain a lifelong client and get a lot more referrals, right? Versus if you do the opposite and just focus on the money and cutting corners and just getting as many people as you can and closing and closing and closing, which you do need to have a hunger to go for it, but it needs to be in the right order, if that makes sense. It's serve first, then money later, because the money will automatically come. But if you put the money first and then serve later, you will start losing your advantage, right? So then the last part of our conversation is planning for your sales conversation. So how you increase your sales is not just what we talked about earlier about, you know, making God your realizing and recognizing that God is the one that gives you the ability to increase your wealth, right? And then secondly, focusing on being a servant, then focusing on the money. But lastly, we're going to touch on planning your sales conversation. This is something that I, as a coach, help people on, is on how to master the sales conversation. What I want you to focus on is planning your sales conversation. So we're going to go into this verse, which is in Proverbs 21, verse 5. Proverb 21, verse 5, which says, the plan of the diligent leads surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. So I chose this verse because I wanted to talk about the fact that most of the time there is not a concrete plan on how to have the sales conversation with your prospect. A lot of times the questionnaire that is set up is not asking relevant enough questions um to dig deep into, especially as a coach or consultant, right? That's what I'm speaking to mostly right now. But even in a face-to-face sales or cold call and things like that, asking the correct questions, preparing your sales pitch, being ready, right? Planning for that conversation is key, right? And oftentimes, especially if you are in the perspective of like cold selling, like or most of the time it's warm calls, but anyways, so cold sellings, right? And you are going you have the prospect booked for a consultation call, or they schedule you to for a pitch presentation, is not properly planning, not properly vetting that prospect in order for you to understand their needs and for you to speak to that directly, right? So one of the things is missing the opportunities and not being ready to have the sales conversation, right? One of the things I focus on is mastering the sales conversation. So in order for you to master the sales conversation, you need to master the conversation. And so in order for you to master the conversation, you need to understand what is the dominant thought pattern, what is the dominant or what is the dominant problem, what is the dominant conversation that this prospect have with themselves around this problem, right? And so the thing is, you can't just hop on, not prepare, and just hope you can close this person. You have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a structure in order for you to ask the right questions, right? Do the correct follow-ups in order for you to be able to close the sale. You can't just come in and just hope for the best, right? So, what are some of the things that you can do is understanding what the actual problem is for that prospect. So, the first thing that you need to do is ask the correct questions and figure out and dig deep to understand what their concerns are. And also to understand what is the impact that the result is going to have on their bottom line, right? What is the impact of whatever problem you solve is going to, how it's going to affect their, if it's a B2B business, if it's a B2C, their customer life, their livelihood, how is it going to change them? How is it going to affect them? What transformation, how much the impact of the transformation that you're going to provide to them is going to change their life, right? And so, but once you find those things, once you find the key takeaways, if you will, right? Then you can build the value to them and showing them why they should work with you, right? How you going to help them achieve their goals and why they need to pick you, right? It's like, I cannot go another day with this issue and I can get this resolved through this person right now, right? And so that's what you want to convey. That's what you need to convey. And in order for you to be able to do that, you need to be able to prepare yourself for the sales conversation, right? So being diligent in everything that you do, being diligent in researching your prospect, being diligent in researching the market in which your prospect works in, to have a better understanding, especially as a coach, right? Understanding what it is that they may be facing. And this is more in a B2B case, right? But even on a customer base, what is it that you're offering that the competitors are not offering, right? That you can cover the gap, and by covering the gap, you can push your customer to the next level that they are needing. that they're trying to get over. Your product, for example, if you're in products, what is it about this product that is different than the other people, that is that specific thing that your customer is needing that other products have not been able to do? So do not be lazy, right? And trying to sell to your prospect without doing the without preparing yourself for that conversation. So that is what I wanted to talk to you about today, the 3 things on how you can increase your sales in through biblical principles, right? So first we're going to remember that God is the one that builds wealth, that gives us the ability to build wealth. So that should release the tension and release the striving and release put you at rest, right? Because he says he leads us to green pastures and he restores our soul. He says, come to him, all of us who are burdened, and he will give us rest. The point is, we can come and rest on him. We can give him our burden. We do our part and let him do the rest, right? So we don't have to burn ourselves from 2 ends of the candle trying to do all of the things because we feel like it's on us, because that is pride. So we are killing that at the roots, right? We are killing that at the roots. We are going to give God the glory, and we're just going to trust him. So that's the first thing. It's not up to you. It's up to God. You do your part and you let it go. So that is one of the first things on how to increase your sales, is to and let it go to God. The second thing is to focus on being a servant. If you focus on serving others, is the finance part is going to come after, is going to come, right? But if you focus on the money aspect and then serving, you're going to lose the opportunity to serve and the money, right? And then lastly is to be diligent. Be diligent in serving your clients. Be diligent on understanding their needs and doing the research, and not just going in there and hoping for the best, because we are, children of God and we work in order, right? God is a God of order and organization. So we're not just going to go in there and just hope for the best. We are going to prepare ourselves for the sales conversation, for the business pitch, for the presentation, for the interview. You are going to be prepared. You are going to show up at your best self. You're not going to rely on yourself, but you are going to show up as your best selves. So those are the 3 things I wanted to talk about on how to increase your sales from a biblical standpoint. We have talked about the practical aspect from a sales perspective. There are other videos that you can watch about that, but I wanted to focus on the godly principles and some verses that you can stand on when you are faced with certain challenges, and remind yourself of those things in order for you to grow your business and increase in your sales. So I hope you found this very helpful. Of course, if you have questions or concern, you can always reach out to me, DM me. If you have questions, always ask, but remember that the person that you need to ask first is God, because he has all the answers that you need, because he said he will guide you, teach you, and counsel you in the way that you should go. So with all that being said, I pray that you guys will have an amazing week, and September is around the corner. So I pray that blessing will continue to follow you everywhere you go. And that's it for me. So I will see you guys next time. Have a good week.